Hi, everybody. My name is Deanna O'Connor, and I am a business journalist, editor, slash many things. But I'm also the founder of the Speak Up Club, which is a social enterprise aimed at empowering women as leaders in business. And it's also opening up to men as well during lockdown so that we can share the knowledge. So we've moved on a bit from what the Speak Up Club usually does with our webinars with Iconic at the moment. And we've gone into reputation management. Now, before Christmas, I did a couple more webinars which dealt with recognizing your USP and personal brand, and also a more general kind of corporate based one for reputation management for business and professionals. So both of these are currently on Iconic's YouTube channel, and I will also be putting them up on the Speak Up Club website today. So if anybody wants to go back and check them out, they're kind of parts 1 and 2 of this, so it all builds on. And we really found that online reputation management was something we wanted to really deep dive into a bit more, because obviously at the moment we're all living our entire lives online. All our work is online, a lot of our social life is online. And I think we've really noticed the power of it with a certain former US president who got booted off Twitter. So I think we're really aware at the moment of how powerful our online reputation is, and whether you use your online resources, social media and all that for good or evil, it is a very powerful thing. And it can also really, make or break you if you kind of go down the wrong path with it. So I'm just going to do a very quick recap before we start on the first thing. So first of all, we're going to just quickly recap and kind of understanding what reputation management is. Because I think a lot of people think of it in terms of crisis management, but also there's a whole lot of behind that kind of strategic reputation management involved with building your reputation, and also really importantly communicating that, because it's about how you communicate and engage with people as well. So then we'll look at kind of encoding that reputation management into your social media and online strategies. So ideally, what you would do is really think about it before you use it. So you'd think about your online strategy if you've got a new business, or if you're just starting to use a social media channel yourself, and then you would have your strategy for it, and then you would launch your social media channel or your website. But obviously probably all of us have all of those things already, but there's new social media channels appearing all the time. So if you haven't got a TikTok yet, maybe you want to think about your TikTok strategy before you open an account. Then we'll just go into online standards of conduct, which you would think we don't really need to hammer home, but unfortunately, if the 45th president of the free world can not understand any of the standards of conduct, then I think it's worth looking at them again and just making sure that you know what the kind of best practices are. And if you have employees in your organization or teams that you're managing, how you can make sure that these are really clearly laid out to anyone who's getting the passwords to any of your social media, or anyone who will be uploading content online. Then we'll have a quick look at kind of best practice of, if you are getting negative feedback online, how to cope with that if you have harassment or trolling. And then back to what everybody thinks this is going to be about, finally, the crisis management element. So let's crack on with, oops, sorry, I just pressed the wrong thing there. Understanding reputation management. So just to very quickly go over this, your brand or your personal brand, if you were looking at this in terms of your own, a solo entrepreneur, or just as a person in the world, or as a company, your brand is very much how you want to be perceived. So we put a lot of work into, picking our logo, our colors, what they mean. If you're using bright colors, if you want something punchy, if you want something classic. So a lot of work goes into how we kind of portray our brand, but that's how we want to be perceived. Unfortunately, our reputation really is out of our control at a certain point, because it's how we are perceived. So we can do a lot of work on our reputation, but it might not always work. So it's best, that you do put the work in, obviously, but at a certain point, and particularly online, we lose control because everybody can clap back at us. So previously, companies especially would use big media to speak to their customers. So it was TV advertising, it was print advertising, it was billboards. And people can't talk back to a billboard, or they can't talk back to an ad on TV, but they can talk back to us now using social media channels. So this is where online reputation management is really quite labor intensive. If you're using, and you should be using social media as another, and maybe your main customer service channel. And this can be quite frustrating for a lot of small businesses, especially because, you know, instead of just getting an email in about a problem, they're getting an Instagram and a Twitter, DMs, or maybe not DMs, maybe like completely just out there on the channel, and they're really visible for other people to see. So they have to really keep an eye on all the different channels, and really be quick to kind of catch anything, any negative feedback. And so for small business owners, I think this can be really trying, really frustrating. I know I was working with a client over Christmas who, you know, was super busy with orders before Christmas, but also, you know, because of all the delays in like deliveries and things like that that were happening last year, they were finding that everybody was coming at them from all angles, on Instagram, on Twitter, all of these places. And they were finding it really hard because we're so busy. We're trying to get our production, you know, keep going and get all our orders out, get everything packed up for the courier every day. And then they were finding it really difficult to actually keep on top of all of the different channels as well. So they really found that, you know, now their customer service isn't via email, isn't necessarily over the phone, it's coming on social media. And that's a real challenge to keep on top of. And it's very important to be constantly monitoring all of these areas. So just to kind of think about it, if you're coming, you know, starting a social media strategy, you really need to coordinate all of your online activity, all of your social media activities as well with your larger business goals and strategies. So taking a step back from it, really looking, you know, from the bird's eye view overview of it, think about what you want your reputation to be, what you want your brand to be perceived as, and then figure out how everything you do online can really feed into that. So your reputation overall, it's a combination of really kind of these three things, which are very important to the intrinsic identity of your company or of yourself. So with a company, when we talk about performance here on the diagram, that could be very much, you know, the performance of the company in terms of stocks, shares, monetary turnover, your actual nuts and bolts figures performance. Then behavior is behavior of, you know, the people, the staff, how you operate in the world, your CSR. And then your communication is obviously how you communicate that to your stakeholders, your customers, the community, and elsewhere. So all of these keep really feeding into one another, and all of them feed into your reputation. So it's a constantly interlinked circle, and you can't separate them out anymore. So this is why it's really important to encode reputation management into your social media strategy and all of your online strategy. So like, if we just look at this, I know you're not really supposed to have more than 8 words on a slide, but I've really overdone it on this one because there are so many uses of social media. So to put them all on one slide, you can really see all of the things you can use it for. I mean, obviously distributing information, conveying a standpoint, whether that be political, ethical, environmental, commenting on things, news, you know, government policy, anything like that, advertising, obviously, observing, just seeing kind of what's going on in your industry, what are best practices, what are your competitors doing. You can really find out a lot from their social media, and you can also see what's working for them, even down to seeing how many likes they got on posts or how many, you know, retweets or things like that. So you can see what's really popular with people in your field, be that for a business or a person. And it's kind of annoying actually that you can't see anymore what other people have got in terms of likes on Instagram, because it is really good, no matter what your business is, or even as a person, if you just want to be more successful with your social media, and up your engagement, it's great to look around and see kind of, you know, take a few people or a few businesses, benchmark yourself against them, look at what's worked for them, and consider what's working for you as well. You can learn a lot from other people's social media. So one way, especially if you're kind of just starting out with social media, to get it off the ground is that you really need to participate and engage. So that's another use of it. And really, you know, it's great for engagement, but also this is helping you build your social media, because the more time you spend with it and the more you engage with other people in your field, the more of a network that you'll build up on it. So it's really important in terms of your strategy to engage with the right people, the right businesses. For some businesses, that might be engaging with your customers. For other people, maybe you want to position yourself as a thought leader in your industry. So you should be looking at people who are maybe a level up from you, and then trying to talk to them about issues that are of interest to you, or that are topics that you want to be seen as knowledgeable on. So, you know, if you're, I mean, at the moment, if you're involved in like medicine, you might be like tweeting Luke O'Neill about immunology things or something like that. So, you know, look at someone who's like top of their game and try and engage with them online is a good way to kind of use social media and engagement. So community building as well for brands or for influencers, you know, it's huge for that. I don't even need to, I mean, we all understand that, don't need to go into it. Customer service, as I've discussed, it is probably becoming the #1 customer service channel, which is a huge reason most of you are probably here today if you're in a business, is that you know it's so important to your customers and you have to get it right. You can also use it for market research and product development, because if you're engaging with your customers or your potential customers, you can, and you really, you know, you can find out what they want. Also media relations, in terms of getting in touch with journalists. You know, you might not know their email address, you might not get any answer to your press release, but you can get them on their Twitter, because journalists, and I am one, love Twitter. Crisis management, brilliant, because key thing to crisis management is getting in like first mover advantage, getting answers back quickly, flooding correct information if there's disinformation out there. So absolutely crucial for that. And employee engagement, it can be just something that, you know, is fun for employees, and potential employees can see, you know, there's a human side to your business. I think we all see that this week with the Garda video. I suppose everyone might have seen at this stage, the Gardaí did a dance video challenge that was put up to them by I think it was the Swiss police. So, you know, that brought Gardaí together and dancing on rooftops and out by windmills and things like that. And so they had a bit of crack in work doing something for social media. So it has so many uses. So all of these things, you know, you need to be building them into your strategy. And when you're working on your strategy, there are a few things that are really important to think about for your social media strategy. So first of all, authenticity is the buzzword, and it's almost such a cliche. I hate the word authenticity at this point, but I think it is really crucial on social media, because you have to come across as real. It's a really informal way of communicating. It's conversational. So, you know, I think it shows very quickly if it's just, you know, not really your brand voice or a real kind of human approach on social media. So, and you know, you can take a much more human approach on social media. And back to the Gardaí example, you know, they and the fire department, the fire brigade as well, I think they often use humor and kind of very human stories on their social media. So it does show that human side. There is real people behind it, and you can have a bit of crack with them. And it's brilliant for showing that human side, which I think is so important. So, but the thing is with authenticity, you know, it's so easy to get caught out in a lie that if you are putting anything fake out in social media, people will catch you out and pick up on it very quickly. So you really have to match what you say and what you do, and be authentic in your communication, as in really being honest on social media as well. So transparency, like if you are trying to show transparency in your business, be that with, you know, putting out something about your environmental policies or CSR, it's a really good way, because public conversations are accessible to everyone. And, you know, it's really just putting it out there. You know, you could put a strategy document for your CSR policy up on your website, but people mightn't look at your website. But there's more chance of getting it out there into the community by putting it up on your social media. So again, another ideal of social media, and you know, in an ideal world, it lives up to all the ideals and it doesn't become this cesspit that it can sometimes. But decentralization of authority. So it really is very democratic. The customers, the general public, have a voice back, which in kind of the old media, they didn't, apart from maybe a letter to an editor or something like that, where, you know, one person might have opened a letter, or the complaints department, one person might have opened that letter and it might have gone straight in the bin. But if you tweet Ryanair that you're annoyed about your flight being cancelled, everybody sees that now. So you know that you have a voice with it. Speed is another really important thing with social media. If someone is complaining at you, then, you know, don't answer it a week or a month later, answer it that day. And then collaboration is another ideal of it, that, you know, use it to build relationships. Don't just think of it in terms of crisis management. You know, be constantly thinking of it in terms of, what can I do with this? How can I engage with this? How can I use this to build community? So just kind of a recap on kind of how to really push the intrinsic identity of your company and put it into your strategy is, think about your corporate character, what your beliefs, your missions and values are. Make sure that you understand it, define it, and then engage employees with it. So don't just think about your strategy and then not tell your employees. Think about your strategy, set it out really clearly, engage all your employees in it, make them understand it, and then let them, empower them to push it out to the wider world. So really have a clear content strategy, have a clear communication strategy, have a clear brand tone of voice. Because, you know, if you have kind of a fun tone of voice, or if you have a very serious formal tone of voice, you want all of your strategy to sound the same. And even if there are multiple people working on multiple social media accounts, or you're using a PR agency, whatever, it should all have the same tone of voice for your brand, and that should be really clear. And then another thing I think is really important to think about, especially for brands or for public figures, is just check, you know, who you follow, who you engage with. Because sometimes when I follow someone on social media, I'll check who they follow. If they're an expert in a certain field, I'll be like, okay, this guy is like an AI expert. I want to follow a few more people in that field. I need to know a bit more about it. Who else is he following? So what I'd like to see when I go into his list of who he's following is other AI experts, you know, people in tech that are worth following. And you don't want to go in there and just see that they're following, you know, a load of like Kim Kardashian, porn stars, whatever. So you want to have your kind of business Twitter or your business Instagram or your brand Instagram to really carefully select who you're following, that it actually, if someone goes into that they see that you're really taking this seriously, that you're following people in your field and in that kind of arena. So it is worth always going through your social media accounts and doing a clear out of who you're actually following. And you can also, especially on Twitter, make lists, which can be private or public lists. So, you know, sometimes it's good to have some public lists where you're actually kind of being useful by providing a service. You could have, you know, an ethical fashion company, and you could have a list of other kind of ethical organizations, standards, ecological standards, all of those things. And that's actually a useful kind of resource for any of your followers as well. So when you're online, standards of conduct. Trump, if you're watching, this one's just for you. Trust, integrity, respect, honesty, responsibility, privacy, and disclosure of advertising endorsement. So, I mean, a lot of those are very self-explanatory. I'll skip explaining the first four. I think you can figure this out for yourselves. Responsibility can come up in terms of, for instance, you know, responsibility of drinks brands not to advertise or target towards under 18s is a really good example of that. Privacy is not, you know, using anything that you haven't really asked the person involved. And I think for people in general, you know, it's really important for us, and it's never too young to start thinking about this. And if you have kids, especially teenagers who are into social media, it's never too early to start telling them that, you know, you should check with your friend before you post that picture of them if it's okay, if they're doing something that maybe they shouldn't be doing, especially, or don't post those pictures if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, because it'll be online forever and it will come back to haunt you. So thinking about what we use, is it okay with the person who's pictured in it? And then the other thing that's really important to think about is disclosure of advertising and endorsement. And that has become I think that it's kind of been dealt with at this stage, but there was a point where with influencers kind of promoting products and brands and not actually kind of making it clear that it was an ad or an endorsement, that there was a huge issue with that a few years ago, and you have to disclose if it is actually paid content. So if you are going, oh, thank you for sending me this amazing box of chocolates, Cadbury's, you have to put hashtag ad or something to really make it clear that they've, it's a gift or you're endorsing it or you're being paid for endorsing it. So just in terms of businesses especially, you need to be clear on this with your employees. You need to set it out. You need to mandate a disclosure policy that complies with the law. So whatever country you're in, check out your local rules, make sure you're compliant with them, and then make sure that staff know what those rules are. Don't give a password to social media to anyone who does not know what those rules are. And even once you have kind of trained them up and you feel you can trust them, make sure that you regularly check in on what they're doing on your behalf, because this is your brand at stake. And if they, it's very easy to, especially when you're younger, to make a kind of a bad judgment call on what you put out on social media. So it's really important to make sure that staff know what they're doing, know what they should be doing, know what they shouldn't be doing, but always just periodically, don't just entrust your social media accounts to someone else and walk away. Look at them sometimes, follow them yourself. So the don'ts and don'ts, and not to get kicked off Twitter or incite riots. So just a really quick run through. Don't say things online that you wouldn't say to someone's face. Don't talk, if you're in company terms, you just shouldn't be talking about anything confidential, proprietary information, or forward-looking information in terms of share value and things like that. Be very careful around copyrighted and trademarked material. Give credit to original content producers. And this is something that, don't steal someone's work, copy it and use it. Don't retweet it without crediting. If you want to put a photo up online, credit the photographer of it. I see, so many people, comedians especially, seem to be having massive gripes with this, that people are stealing their material and using it on their own social media. So where you can, give credit, tag the original producer. Don't just go, oh, I saw this and it's cool, don't know who made it. People hate that. So if you know who it is, thank them for their content that they have put some blood, sweat and tears into producing. Don't ever disguise your identity or affiliation online. If you, especially if you're getting into a conversation about something that is connected to your work, make it clear where you're coming from. If you are commenting on something, you should have it in your bio anyway, maybe what your affiliations are. But if you don't have anything in your bio and you're kind of jumping into a Twitter conversation or something like that, say, I work at the government, or I'm a member of the Green Party, or whatever it is. Don't try and hide that. And don't jump into Twitter spats anyway, if you can, would be my advice. But if you are entering into a debate online, do disclose your affiliations. Don't use any libelous or defamatory language. It is still possible to get sued for something you've said online. Look at Elon Musk and the comments he made about the diver in that rescued the football team of boys in Thailand, I think it was. So he got sued over that. You can be liable for defamatory language. So just best practice is not to be negative online in general. Don't reveal private information about your co-workers or yourself. Even your best online self is a positive. Online can be very overly positive in some senses, but I think that there's a time and a place for things, and online is a shout into the void. So keep private information for your best friend and your family, and not the whole world doesn't need to know it. And don't incite riots if you can possibly avoid it. So if you have got into a negative situation online, whether that's getting trolled, getting a negative comments from someone constantly bombarding you with unwanted photos or something like that, I think most women will have had a few. Here is kind of a quick run through of a few situations you might find in that sense. So Negative feedback comes basically, this is a great, this comes from the actual American Air Force. They did a great kind of diagram, which unfortunately was too big to put on a slide because there's all these kind of yes, no options. And then what do you do if, you know, kind of choose your own adventure style. So they kind of go through the different types of people that come at you with negative stuff online and then how to respond to them. So I've adapted from their diagrams. So the 4 types they have kind of come up with are trolls, ragers, misguided, and unhappy customer. So trolls are just, you know, hiding behind their computer screen. They're online to give out, to get into arguments, to say things they would never dare say to someone's face in real life, probably. They're bashing people without knowing all the facts. They're trying to humiliate or degrade people, and they're just pure nasty. Ragers are having a rant. They might have a basis for the rant, but they're given out basically. And sometimes it can be, you know, ranting against something that is the opposite to their ideals. They can, sometimes ragers can be doing it in a jokey way or satirical way, but they're generally, there's a bit more foundation to what they're giving out about, say, but it's not really based in a fact. It's more of an idealistic, say. Then misguided can be someone who is basically has the wrong end of the stick, and they're putting out information that isn't factual. So I think there's probably a lot of that going on at the moment in terms of COVID. So rumors, wrong information, just maybe someone that got the wrong end of the stick and didn't have the full story. And then we have our unhappy customers, which is the one that is really, really important for business to manage. So someone who's had a bad experience, who's genuinely making a complaint. And, you know, I'm very much of the opinion that we should really only put out positive vibes only on social media. And I try not to complain on Twitter if I can possibly avoid it. But I think we've all got to the point with a company whose customer service is so bad that we're like, okay, the only way to get some satisfaction here is to tweet them. And we've all got to that point at some point. So you've probably all been that unhappy customer, and you know that once you tweet them, you will get your problem resolved because it's public and they want their good reputation maintained. So this is kind of the 3 things you can do: monitor, respond, rectify. So trolls and ragers, they're just people who love giving out, and they probably wouldn't do it to your face. So the best thing to do with them is monitor it, but don't engage. You're only going to get into a nasty spat and you probably can't reason with them. I mean, it's always worth, like, as a person, you're probably better off as an individual not even reading them, and probably block them if you can. Because I think for a person, psychologically, it's a lot to deal with. And it, you know, it's very upsetting for an individual. However, if you're a business, if you're not going to block them, but do monitor them, you know, there may be a grain of truth in what their problem is. So you do want to take that on board and deal with it if it's actually something that is genuinely upsetting people about your company. You know, if you are doing something wrong, then you should be actually doing something about fixing it rather than ignoring people who are drawing it to your attention. So as a business, I would say monitor. As an individual, I would say block. Misguided people you do need to respond to because they have wrong information, but respond calmly, respond with facts, don't get personal. And, you know, back up what you say. If you have a credible source, use it. And then an unhappy customer. For businesses, this is so important. You must quickly, clearly respond, rectify. Make sure that you publicly respond to them. But you can use DMs as well. But, you know, if there is a complaint on your Twitter or something, for example, or Instagram account, where someone has given out about something, you know, you should really respond saying, hi, I'm going to send you a DM, or please DM me and we'll sort this out for you as soon as possible. So at least that other people see that you have dealt with it, but then you can deal with it privately on DMs. So if you are getting harassed for individuals, you know, just again, check out in your locality. I know we may have some people from the UK here, so law will be quite different to what's in Ireland. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of the legal stuff, but just be aware of what is against the law in your jurisdiction. Make sure you immediately screenshot and save all messages because you want the proof. before. So if you're going to delete them, screenshot first, put them away in a folder where you don't need to look at them. If you're on a social media, report to moderators, block, etc., or request removal of offending content if it's something that's been put up publicly. So get in touch with the actual organization of the app or social media channel. And then, you know, if it's continuing and you know that it is something that is against the law, then contact the police. So again, I won't go into the specifics of what is legal in different jurisdictions, but just make sure first thing is to always screenshot and save, file away in a folder where you don't have to look at it. So you have that proof of time, date, what they sent, if you do want to take it further and hopefully get help with that. Now back to crisis management, which is, I suppose, what a lot of people will first think of when we talk about reputation management. But what I really want to make sure you all take away today is that reputation management starts with your strategy for it and how you behave, because really that is the cornerstone of what people think of you. So if you're doing good, people will generally have a good perception of you unless you're really not communicating it well. So in a crisis, they will happen despite the best of intentions. It's always important to have that plan in place in your strategy as well. So, you know, your customers, especially if it's just, you know, a crisis could be a tiny crisis, like somebody got a defective product, or it could be a massive crisis, like you're an oil company and a tanker has just spilled oil all over the sea. But you have to act quickly. Or another example, I think, has been like, say, Air's really bad reputation in terms of customer service recently. So, you know, you have to react to people. You have to constantly, you know, take their concerns on board and be shown to be doing something about it as quickly as possible. So, you know, information will be shared at speed. And unfortunately, if people start complaining about you online, it is going to go viral quicker than you can control it. So you have to really get back to them as quickly as possible and flood the media with your kind of, you know, your response to it. So again, this is where you really need, if you are giving responsibility to staff, you know, it's very easy to kind of throw social media stuff at juniors and interns, but it is really important that there are people who have, you know, training, who know what to do in a crisis, in charge of that as well, or that can quickly take over. Speed of response, as I said, really vital. So this again is another slide that I've gone big on the text on, but I think this is really, really important. So I think it's just worth giving it that little bit of time. And it's really a playbook for how to respond. So this is kind of the questions you ask yourself. So question 1, what are the legitimate expectations of our stakeholders? I'm a small business. I sent out a product that was defective. Someone's complained at me online. What is the legitimate expectation of them? They have a legitimate expectation that I will A, respond to them immediately, 2, apologize, 3, fix the problem. What is the appropriate response for responsible organization? Fix it. And then what do you want your audience to know, think, or feel about either the company or issue in question? So you want them to know that this is really unusual. Most of our products are really good quality. Unfortunately, you know, mistakes or things do happen. And, you know, as a percentage of all the products we make, this is 0.001% ever have a defect. And we're going to recompense this customer or send them another perfect product. So you want to put out, you know, we're generally good, we do good, we effed up one time kind of thing, and we're fixing it as quickly as possible. If there's a rumor going around, again, the more delays, the more the harm. So you need to get on top of it really fast. Crucial points, studies have said, to take control of the narrative are at 45 minutes, 6 hours, 3 days, 2 weeks. So you have to get straight on it. You have to get on it a few hours later because the kind of news cycle kind of cycles around. So if this is going to go from social media onto the actual evening news, onto next day's papers, onto the weekend papers, onto coming back around if people check back up to see if you've actually fixed the problem, those are kind of the cycles where you need to be intervening at. And again, as I've mentioned before, you kind of have to fight fire with fire. So if someone is putting out something false or misleading, you need, to flood that information that is true into that space. Thanks a million. And yeah, as I said, you can go to speakupclub.ie. I'm going to put up the part 1 and 2 kind of that little triptych on my website. So they'll be very easy to find on that, but also you can go to youtube.com/iconic offices, I think, and all of the webinars they've been doing are there. So you probably won't find mine because you'll get distracted by all the other amazing webinars that are on it. There's so much, it's such a great resource. So well done to Iconic for that. And thanks a million, everyone, and hopefully see all of you soon at another webinar.